Hi everyone, welcome again to my Edessa playthrough series of Kerbal Space Program. So let's get started. I've looked up some fresh trivia for us tonight, some history about Edessa, the city that I've used as the namesake of this playthrough, as well as some more history of spaceflight. Hopefully you enjoy it, and here we go. First, let's just recap where we're up to. So we'll go into the Space Center, and we don't have any tracked objects, so we don't have any missions in progress. Let's have a look at our contracts window. Not alarm was window, contracts window. So our current mandate is to fly by the Mun and return to Kerbin from a flyby of the Mun. Let's have a look at what technologies we have available to us. So we have 41 science, which is not enough to unlock advanced rocketry, which will give us all these goodies. What do we have in terms of electrics? We don't have any solar panels. Okay. We don't have MakeJeb, the first level of MakeJeb unlocked either, so we're still flying by hand. Okay. We do have some pretty neat aviation parts, which is handy. Some stability and decouplers. Okay. I think we may have enough to just do a rough flyby. Let's just have a look at what jobs we have available. So conduct an observational survey below 18,000 meters. We can achieve that. Another one below 16,000. See, all of these observational surveys below 18,000, below 16,000, you pretty much need airplanes to make those, and they're a pretty good way to make some extra money and science while you're first starting out. So this one requires us to haul the RT-10 Hammer solid fuel booster into flight above Kerbin, and these tend to be a bit more difficult, and quite honestly I don't think they're really worth the effort most of the time, unless if they're like, you know, test this thing while on the launch pad or while landed or while splashed down. They tend to be pretty useful, but these you have to really look closely at the altitude and speed requirements, because they tend to be, sometimes because they're randomly generated, sometimes they can be outright infuriatingly impossible to achieve, and other times they're perfectly fine, so it's a case by case. Generally speaking, I tend to just ignore them. This one is to test a decoupler while splashed down at Kerbin. See, this is what I mean. These kind of missions are more or less easy money. You accept that, fire up with that part, land into the water, and test it. This one is to test the decoupler landed at Kerbin. So this one is just activate the part through staging sequence when all test conditions are met, which is you have the decoupler, you're at Kerbin, and you're landed. You can pretty much do this on the launch pad. And at the moment we're limited to 2 contracts, so I can't accept any more, which is fine. We'll just run a quick mission to test our decoupler, and then we'll go back and test the other parts. Okay, so I'm just going to go to open and have a look at what craft we already have. So we have some rockets, that's fine. These are all just basics. By the way, this is a really cool upgrade to the save and load menu. This comes from the Kerbal X mod, and it also allows you to actually upload your craft onto the Kerbal X website, which then allows other people to have a look at it and give you likes and stuff like that. Really, really cool stuff. Be sure to check it out. I absolutely love this thing. I cannot go back to the old load menu after using this mod. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to this. So let's have a double check of our job, which is to test the Mark 1 stack decoupler fuselage splashdown at Kerbin. Well, let's have a look at the Mark 1 stack decoupler fuselage. So I'm just gonna type in MK1 stack D. Okay. All right, it's just a stack decoupler. Okay, of course. It's a decoupler fuselage, which is slightly heavier than the stock decoupler, but you do get it one science level earlier, which is really handy. And of course, it's sort of got a paint job and so on, so it looks more like an airplane part than anything else. Okay, so we need to have that equipped, and we need to be splashed down. And how do we test it? We need to activate the part through the staging sequence when all test conditions are met. Okay, so what I think we might do, we need to be able to just fly out a little bit over the water, land into the water, and then decouple. So I think with just the parachute, well, I sure hope I have the parachute unlocked. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. So with just the parachute, we should be able to safely land into the water. I'm just going to reduce the fuel load on this to maybe half. And our thrust to weight ratio is nearly 10, which means we'd be pulling 10 Gs on takeoff. This is going to limit that thrust to about 2. That will make it a little bit easier to fly. And it will not cause our Kerbals to pass out. So we'll fly, we'll decouple, and we'll deploy the chute. So I'll swap these two. So we'll actually fly, deploy the chute, and then decouple. Okay. That will do. Just gonna call this one the MK1 stack D test vehicle. Save that. That should be all we need. We're just gonna need a pilot. Good old Jeb. In fact, I'm gonna have Valentina fly this one. Okay. Save that. Just quick double check to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. We cannot transmit science. Oh, we have unused monopropellant. Now what I want to do is, hang on, back to build. We do have some monopropellant in here, which still actually takes up weight. It is a little bit. It isn't a great deal. It is, in fact, according to this, it is 40 kilograms. So it is a really cool way to dump a bit of excess weight if you're not using the monopropellant. And if you look at the Delta V, with a full load of monopropellant, that is 40 kilos of monopropellant, we have a Delta V of 503 meters per second. With that emptied, that gives us an extra 12 meters per second Delta V, up to 515. And it increases our thrust to weight ratio to 2.03. So as you can see, every little bit counts, and when you're first starting out, or in fact, whenever you're not using monopropellant, it's really useful to just drain that manually. Okay, so I'm gonna save that, and yeah, I think that will do. And let's have a look. Okay, and I've chosen to do this flight at night, which, that's fine, I suppose. So, let's just plan this out. So we're going to take off, and we're going to turn to the right until we land into the water, and then we're going to deploy. It's going to bring up our contracts window. So we're at Kerbin, and we need to be splashed down before we test our decoupler. Okay, so I'm going to activate SAS. And in 3, 2, 1, go. Nice and lightweight. It's relatively easy to fly with just our reaction wheels. Okay, doing well. Getting out over the water. Get a little bit of altitude just to give the chute enough time to deploy. Before we flip over, I'm just going to deploy the chute. Oop. Okay. And there we have a successfully deployed chute about 500 meters above sea level. Okay. And now we just gently descend back into the water, and once we're splashed down, we'll be able to once again engage staging and successfully finish this contract. This will give us an extra 2 science, 4 points of reputation, and 13,500 credits, which is cool. It'll do. But more importantly, it will open up another contract slot for us to do another test mission. These are, these kind of contracts are mundane, but they can be interesting, trying to sort of achieve the rudimentary sort of requirements. Anyway, so now I'm just going to give you some more space trivia, courtesy of Wikipedia. I'm going to talk about the first man in space. On April 12th, 1961, the USSR opened the era of manned spaceflight with the flight of first cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin. And we're almost about to land. Okay, and we have a successful splashdown. There we go. Now, what we're going to do, can we do an EVA while splashdown? We can. Very nice. Valentina, will you please perform all science? And she is just still giving us the generic statement. She doesn't think a spacesuit was entirely necessary to get here. Okay, believe me, if I could send out the Kerbal notes without a spacesuit, it would save us a bit of weight, but we don't have that option at the moment. Okay, so now we're splashed down and we're on Kerbin. So I'm just going to stage again. There we have it. Mission successful, contract complete. We got some good data here. Well, that's good. Okay. And now we recover the vessel. Okay, we have also earned 6 science, which is nice. We're now up to 49 units of science. Recovered some parts, that's cool. And Valentina has just finished her first flight and she has gained 1 point of experience. Not enough to give her a star just yet, but we'll get there. Okay, so now that we have over 45 science, let's have a look at what we can unlock with it. So we don't quite have enough for this lot. This requires 90, but we have some construction, which is cool. These are really handy. These are basically hold down clamps for your rocket. They'll make sure that your rocket doesn't topple over while on the launch pad. See, most of the rockets when you first start out, they just kind of have to freestand on their rocket nozzles, which of course is not desirable, particularly once they get heavier or if they're not particularly wide at the base. So these hold down clamps, starting out with these, but then you get some heavier duty ones later on. They're really, really handy. So we're going to unlock that, which drops us down to 4.8 units of science. That's fine. We shall earn more. So let's have a look at what other contracts we have. Ferry for tourists. We really don't want to deal with tourists just yet. We don't, because typically when you're ferrying tourists, they want things like suborbital space flights and so on. They will occupy a seat that you usually would put a Kerbal node in, and at the moment we only have a pod that will house 1 Kerbal node. So the way we get around that is we put the tourist into the pod, and then we use a probe core to actually pilot it. So it's basically a tourist is being flown by a drone. Now the problem is I've selected in our settings that we don't have extra comms stations on Kerbin, which means that any drone core we set up there is going to go dark as soon as it's on the far side of Kerbin. which of course may well likely mean that we will lose whatever tourists we send up there. So until we've set up a comms network in orbit, we won't be able to do these. I mean, we could, but I would prefer not to. So this is a haul mission. It's basically saying take this liquid fuel engine into an altitude of 20,000 meters, but doing 850 to 920 meters per second, which I am not going to do. Another hole, so there's a bunch of holes. Okay, test the TD-18 decoupler landed at Kerbin. We can just do this on the launch pad, so I'm going to accept that. Okay, and I'm just going to get rid of that. So we want the TD-18, so TD-18. Okay. Don't expect decouplers with a naked flame. Point arrow up, light fuse, and retire to a safe distance. Okay. So we'll put that on here. And we'll call this one TD-18 test vehicle. Save that. Put Valentina in there. And away we go. Okay, so we're at Kerbin and we're landed, and now we activate the part through the staging sequence, blah 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 blah. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, activate. And that's it, simple as that. Mission complete. And we're back. We in fact gathered 0.1 science, which is cool, I guess. So next, we recovered all of our funds, and Valentina gained no XP from that experience. Okay, so that's done. What else do we have? So they want science from data around Kerbin, from space around Kerbin. Okay, which means we go to space, we gather some science, we return, and we get some extra bonuses. That's pretty cool. We want to test the Juno basic jet engine. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to try to do one of these focused observational surveys. Now, what can happen is you can get trapped by one of these. Sometimes it's because usually it's because they ask for an altitude that you simply don't have the technology to reach, whereas all of these are asking you to be in flight below a particular altitude. So you can just be 500 meters off sea level and you're fine. So all of these are fine. I just want to make sure that none of them are on the far side of the planet, because I do not want to be flying there for the entirety of this episode. Okay, it looks like they are all within the neighborhood. So this is Kerbin's Luck. This is PH25J, but it is by the Moving Parts Expert Group. And this one is by an unknown agency, but the location is called Strabin Hindsight. So it looks like all three jobs are within the immediate neighborhood. So what we'll do is we'll take one of those missions and we will build an airplane that will be able to do all of those. So first what I want to do is I want to upgrade our mission control so that we can have more than 2 contracts active at a time. So we'll upgrade that. Next, I want to upgrade our runway because at the moment it is a dirt track, and trying to take off from one of those is too dangerous and just unnecessary. So we'll upgrade that to just our basic sort of tarmac. Our spaceplane hangar may need an upgrade later on, but I think we'll do without it. So let's see what we can achieve with our current tech. Okay, so first up, we'll just use a cockpit. We'll throw in some fuel. Just a liquid jet fuselage. We'll attach some wings. Okay, good enough. We'll attach a tail. Okay. And a rudder. Lovely. Now we'll need some control surfaces. There we go. And we'll need some elevons. These are particularly useful later on, once we unlock control groups. They can be used as brakes. So what you do is, you put them on as pairs, like this. And separate them, offset them like this, to sort of minimize clipping. Okay, and now I'm going to tell this one to deploy. And of course, as you can see, it clips right into its bottom neighbor, so I'll reverse that direction. And this one goes down. So that way, once we have control groups unlocked, we can bind this to the brakes. And it will allow us to land much more easily. But we don't have that just yet, so we'll just leave it here. We'll turn off all of its controls. And we'll turn off the deployment. So we'll act just as an extra bit of surface area for a little bit of extra lift. Next, we want to turn off any unnecessary controls for these elevons and control surfaces. So this one will only move for our roll, and it won't have any effect on our pitch or our yaw. Our rudder wants to only do our yaw. We don't want it to affect our roll. You get quite a bit of an instability from leaving this on. And of course our tail should only be working with our pitch. Sometimes you want to set this to also do your roll, but in my experience I've found that because of the sort of delayed movement of these control surfaces, it's really good to just let them, just do one job at a time. Don't make your control surfaces multitask if you can get away with it. Okay, so now that we have our craft and we have our fuel, we need to give it some engines. So what I can do is, let's have a look at what engines we do have. We have a bunch of rocket engines, we have some propellers, and we have the Juno Basic jet engine. So I think I'm going to go with the Juno Basic. It provides a decent bit of thrust, and unlike the propellers, they tend to work pretty well at low speeds, and they're really, really fuel efficient. But their thrust really tends to drop off the faster you go. Whereas jets kind of have the opposite. The faster you go, they tend to be more efficient. Okay, so we'll go with the Juno Basic, but what we need to do is we need to attach it to something. So let's have a look at the Mark 0 liquid fuselage. That's usually a good one. Okay, and we'll attach the engine to it. Now, of course, these engines are not rocket engines. They need air in order to function, so we'll need some intakes. Of course, we'll have the small circular intake. A must-have for air-breathing engines. This intake duct will pull in outside air to run turbine engines on, as long as there is any outside air to begin with, of course. Optimized for subsonic flight, which is perfect. Okay, and as is customary, I'm going to put the engine nacelles underneath. Lovely. Okay, so now let's have a look at our center of mass. We need to move our wings so that they're generally right in the middle of our center of mass. Okay, and we'll move our wing up just so that our kerbal can get out. Like that. Lovely. Now let's drain the fuel. Good, so when we drain the fuel, the center of mass does not move a great deal, which is excellent. And let's drain the fuel on this one. It doesn't move very much at all. That's good. Okay. Next, we need some wheels. And some steerable landing gear and some fixed landing gear. We'll go with the fixed. Okay. And it appears to be having some trouble. Hang on. Oh, it's upside down. It's difficult to see. Right, okay. No, that's not it. There we go. Okay, let's just rotate this a little bit. Lovely. Let's move this a bit down. Try to get a bit more clearance. Okay, now let's try to position. In fact, it's actually pretty good. We just drain the fuel and make sure that it's not, because we don't. If we don't balance the center of mass correctly over the wheels, it'll just topple over backwards. So at the moment, it's a little bit too close to the wheels. I'm just going to move that a little bit further back, like that. Okay. Let's fuel her up again. Good, good. Now we're just going to need one more wheel at the front. There we go. Position that. Gotta remember the wheel itself, the single wheel, can take a lot less stress than the two wheels at the back. If nothing else, it's by pure virtue of there being two of them in the back. So what you want to do is when you want to land on your back wheels first. Okay. I think that should do us. I'm not really sure about the tolerance of these wheels, whether I've made this craft too heavy. I think we should be alright. Checking our staging, it'll just fire up the engine and that's it. We don't have any control groups to toggle our engines on and off, so that's fine. We'll just rely on throttle. Okay. So, we shall call this one the plane. What should we call this airplane? Scout. Highly uncreative, I know, but that will do. We save that. That should do us. And of course, one thing I want to do is notice how our center of lift is quite a bit far back from our center of mass. What I want to try to do is I want to try to modify the wing pitch so that our center of lift is brought as far forward as possible without being in front. If our center of lift is in front of our center of mass, the airplane will simply flip over, right? Whereas if our center of lift is too far back, the airplane will keep pitching down and we're going to have a hard time keeping it level. So let's try. Let's see what happens if we rotate this. Notice how it sort of comes back like that, and of course if you go too far, you end up just braking. You end up effectively stopping your movement. So I'm just going to move it back like this. And of course if you do this, you end up reversing your lift. Notice how the big arrow is pointing downwards. Okay, so getting wing pitch right is one of the trickier bits in aircraft design. But it is one of the key things that once you get it right, you'll get a lot of benefits from it. Okay, now let me just make sure that our center of thrust is aimed correctly. If we do that, okay, there we go. Okay, that's fairly close. So if we drain the fuel, it really doesn't shift the center of mass very much, so that's fine. Okay, I think that's as good as I like it for our first attempt, and we'll have Valentina fly this one. Save that, and let's get them contracts. Another thing, I want to just skip over to morning. I don't really want to be flying at night. It's difficult enough as it is. And we seem to have some... oh, right, we have some debris out there. Let me just collect that. Good. Now let's get them contracts. So focused observational survey below 18,500. Accept. Another observational survey below 18,200. Yep. Focused observational survey below 16,800. Accept that. Good. So we'll leave facility. Go back to the hangar. And while we wait, I'm just going to get my wingman attack joystick, which I'm going to use to fly this thing. Go back to our crew. Valentina's on board. Good. And away we go. Okay, good. Well, it's passed the first test. The landing gear did not blow up. It's going to engage the brakes so we don't go rolling off. Now, while on the runway, it's always good to do just a quick check of all the control surfaces. So we're just going to roll to the right, roll to the left, pitch up, pitch down. Good. And yaw. Yaw. Good. Just double checking the steering of our front wheel. So steering right, steering left. Yeah, you'd be surprised how often you actually get this one backwards. And your craft actually ends up fishtailing all the way down the runway because its control surfaces and its steering is actually fighting each other. Okay, so I'm just going to drop the throttle and engage staging to activate the engines. Okay, and now we throttle up. As our throttle builds, we let go of the brakes, change to chase camera. Once we reach about 30 meters per second, we should be good to rotate. And we are away. Okay, now here's the test. I let go of the stick, and I'm not running the SAS. And it is slowly pitching up. Okay, so I have overdone the wing pitch a little bit. But that's fine, not terribly. The first real test was, you really don't want it to just suddenly nose down as soon as you let go of the stick. So that's fine. At the moment we're pitching up a little bit, but that's fine. I can just handle that by turning on SAS. Okay. Now let's have a look at our navigation. So which place do we go to first? This place. So all of these are crew report missions, so that's fine. We only need a cockpit and a Kerbal node inside to do a crew report. So we'll activate this, and we'll pin it down, and let's just make sure, where is our crew report? Crew report, there we go. So we'll tap on that as soon as we're within range. Okay, good. Let's fly. Whoa, it is very, very responsive. Even touching the stick a little bit sends it flying. This is good stuff. I think we've done exceptionally well, and we're already inside Kerbin's luck, so we'll perform a crew report. And of course it gives us nothing, but it means we've just finished our first mission. We'll go back to the map and select the next place. Trubbin's Hindsight. Activate navigation. And looking at that, it looks like it's going to be to our southwest. So we'll just do a rotation. I'm just going to go inside the cockpit. Whoa, this thing is really, really responsive. This is amazing stuff. There we go. I think we've done exceptionally well for our first attempt. This is amazing stuff. Okay, let's activate. There we go. This display, by the way, is also from another mod. If there's enough interest, I'm more than happy to list all of the mods that I use. They're really, really handy. I mean, I honestly, I don't think I could ever play vanilla Kerbal Space Program anymore after playing with all these mods. They're just amazing work done by these amazingly talented people, and they really deserve all the praise and donations that they can get. Okay, so now we're heading towards Trabin's Hindsight. Okay. It still really, really wants to pitch up, and it is really sensitive to controls. Let's see if I can. That's more like it. Okay. See, if I choose the more sensitive control mechanism by hitting Shift lock, caps lock, it seems to help it a little bit. That's good. Let's just change direction. Just heading towards that waypoint now. What altitude are we on? We're approaching. I can't see. 5 kilometers up. This is amazing. This is just so responsive. Yeah, it is really, really touchy. We are doing 278 meters per second. Oh, we're inside Trabin's Hindsight. So, have to get out. Crew report. And there we have mission 2 out of 3 complete. Lovely. Let's go back to the map. And moving parts expert group, sector PH25J. Activate that. Okay. Let's perform a maneuver. How high up are we now? The sky is starting to turn awfully dark. We're 8 kilometers up. Okay, well that explains it. We're actually quite a way up. In terms of feet, what is that? I think it's 2.2 feet to the meter. So effectively we're approaching 20,000 feet, give or take. So it's going to gently roll us towards north, and gorgeous sun flare by the Scatterer mod, and of course clouds and amazing graphics provided by Scatterer and by EVE and Copernicus as well. 3 separate mods working together in harmony. Okay, we're approaching north. It's going to take us a few degrees off of north to head towards our next contract location. Okay. Leveling it off. Leveling it off. It is really tricky. There we go. Oop. Can't seem to let go of the stick at the moment. Have to kind of nurse it. Okay, there we go. Let's look over the side. So there's our engine off to the side. Looks like we can see it through our exit door right there. Our exit door seems to be on its side for some reason. Okay. We can throttle up and down, which is cool. What other options do we have in here? Let's look at our multifunction display. This, of course, is also provided by another mod. I think I mentioned that already. So this is our radar altitude, which is cool. It appears to be just our altitude to terrain over time, which is cool. Next, we can choose a target, which is cool. I'm going to stop saying which is cool now. Okay, vessel view is not installed. I'm guessing these are all different mods. I don't know what that is. It seems to be upside down as well. Apparently a connection to a satellite. Some information about our craft here. That's cool. Okay. So yeah, just some information about our craft, and of course we can have different settings at all these different displays. Yeah, I'm just going to zoom us in so we can see our nav ball, and we can just make out our altitude here as well as a bunch of information here. Cool. No, okay, there we go. That will do. Now we just cruise. We're at 8.5 kilometers up, and we're heading towards our last objective, which is sector PH-25J, or Papa Hotel-25 Juliet, as they would say. So, while we're traveling, here is some more space trivia. Last time we spoke about Yuri Gagarin. His first flight was part of the Soviet Vostok space exploration program. It took 108 minutes and consisted of a single orbit of the Earth. So he got all the way around the Earth in 108 minutes. On August 7th, 1961, German Titov, another Soviet cosmonaut, became the second man in orbit during his Vostok 2 mission. By June 16, 1962, the Union launched a total of 6 Vostok cosmonauts, 2 pairs of them flying concurrently, and accumulating a total of 260 cosmonaut orbits and just over 16 cosmonaut days in space. On May 5th, 1961, the US launched its first suborbital Mercury astronaut, Alan Shepard, in the Freedom 7 capsule. The US public was becoming increasingly shocked and alarmed at the widening lead obtained by the USSR, so President John F. Kennedy announced on May 25th a plan to land a man on the moon by 1970, launching the 3-man Apollo program. On February 20th, 1962, the US succeeded in launching the 3rd manned orbital spaceflight in history with John Glenn, the first US orbital astronaut, making 3 orbits during his Friendship 7 mission. By May 16, 1963, the US launched a total of 6 Project Mercury astronauts, logging a cumulative 34 Earth orbits and 51 hours in space. Now, as for the first woman in space, it was the former civilian parachutist Valentina Tereshkova, who entered orbit on June 16, 1963, aboard the Soviet mission Vostok 6. The chief Soviet spacecraft engineer, Sergei Korolyov, apologize, I've butchered that one, Sergei Korolyov, conceived of the idea to recruit a female cosmonaut corps and launch 2 women concurrently on Vostok 5 and 6. However, his plan was changed to launch a male first in Vostok 5, followed shortly afterward by Tereshkova. Khrushchev personally spoke to Tereshkova by radio during her flight. I seem to be a little bit off course. I'm just going to correct that. There we go. And just apply a little bit of rudder as we roll into our turn. Still very, very touchy, but I'm starting to get the feel. Very, very flighty girl, this one, but it does fly amazingly well for our first attempt. Okay. Come on, level up for me. There we go. We're starting to see the curvature of Kerbin a little bit. We're starting to get high enough. Okay, have a look at our altitude. And we're entering the sector. So let's quit out and perform our crew report, and that is 343. Now all we gotta do is get home. So let's navigate home. Where is our Kerbal Space Center? Can we target the Kerbal Space Center? No, we cannot. Okay, so what we're gonna have to do, is find it. appear to have lost it entirely. What is going on? There we go. Alright, I'm just losing it in the clouds. Okay, what I'm going to have to do is, as soon as I can, I'm going to need to put an object at the Kerbal Space Center so that we can target it. But for now, we're just going to go by eye. So it looks to be roughly directly south of us. So if north is 0 and east is 90 degrees, then south is 180. And this looks roughly, this is 90, this is 180, this is roughly 170. So we'll go back to our cockpit. And we'll look down so we can still see our nav ball. There we go. And we're going to go into a turn. Just do a nice and tight turn. Pushing those elevons at the moment. Doing a pretty tight turn, losing a great deal of speed, dropping to about 120. So we're at 270 degrees. I've appear to have overcompensated. I've turned us all the way west. So I'm just going to turn us back. There we go. Back to 170 degrees. Just trying to level it off. It's very, very squirrely. There we go. Okay. So if we have a look, we can see the mountains over in the distance. And if I remember my geography of the Kerbal system, I believe Kerbal Space Center should be directly ahead. And I believe that is the island where the abandoned airfield is. So hopefully we should be hitting the Kerbal Space Center along this course. Okay. Now, where were we? We're talking about Valentina Tereshkova. We, of course, our pilot currently is Valentina Kerman, which I believe is an homage to the first woman in space. So on November 3rd, 1963, Tereshkova married fellow cosmonaut Adrian Nikolaev, who had previously flown on Vostok 3. On June 8, 1964, she gave birth to the first child conceived by two space travelers. The couple divorced in 1982, and Tereshkova went on to become a prominent member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The second woman to fly to space was aviator Svetlana Savitskaya aboard Soyuz T-7 on August 18, 1982. Sally Ride became the first American woman in space when she flew aboard the space shuttle mission STS-7 on June 18, 1983. Women space travelers went on to become commonplace during the 1980s. Helen Sharman became the first European woman in space aboard the Soyuz TM-12 on May 18, 1991. Okay, so let's have a look. We don't have a lot of visibility out of the cockpit, but I can definitely see those mountains coming up alongside. And there's the ocean to our port side. So hopefully, I really should have put a camera in the belly of this craft. That is another mod, by the way. It allows you to have a camera mounted on the craft, and then you can use the multifunction display here to look outside. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pitch down to get a little bit closer to the ground, and let's see if we can make out the Kerbal Space Center in the distance. Okay. So let's have a look. And we see it. I believe that's it. There it is. There's home. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly towards that and hopefully attempt a landing. Okay, doing about 316 meters per second, getting very close to the speed of sound. Which, of course, as we read in the description for our engines are only really designed for subsonic flight. The thrust tends to really drop off once we hit that sound barrier. But still, I believe even our little Scout here should be able to break the sound barrier in a dive, if not in level flight. Okay, so 8.8 kilometers up. Not really sure how far away we are from the KSC, but we're definitely headed towards it at this point. I might read some more trivia for you as well. How about a little bit about Edessa, the namesake of this particular playthrough? So during the period of the Ottoman rule, the Turkish and Muslim component of the town's population steadily increased. From the 1860s onwards, the town was a flashpoint for clashes between Greeks and Bulgarians. After almost 500 years of Ottoman rule, Edessa was annexed by Greece on 18th of October 1912 during the First Balkan War, following the Hellenic army's military victory against the Ottomans in the Battle of Sarantaporo. At that time, Edessa was already well on its way to becoming a major industrial center in Macedonia. 4 large textile factories were in operation by 1914, employing the abundant waterfalls as a source of energy. Okay, we are definitely on our way to the Kerbal Space Center. So what I might do now is, we'll need to sort of come in either from the east or the west to sort of line ourselves up with the runway. So I figure what I'm going to do is, if we overshoot the runway, I don't really want to end up in the hills, so we might just approach from the hills. At least that way, if we overshoot, we can still attempt a splashdown landing. Okay, coming in through the clouds at 3.5 kilometers up. It's very, very squirrely. Very difficult to control, but it's just simply because it's just that sensitive. I just touch the stick and off it goes, even with the precision controls enabled. We're going really, really fast. Again, 324 meters per second, which if you want that value in kilometers an hour, that is, you simply multiply by 3.6. So we are doing, let's see, 300 by 0.6, which gives us, which gives us 180, and 3 by 300, which gives us 900, so it's about 1,000 kilometers per hour plus. And in miles per hour, that is about 600 or 700 miles per hour. Okay, approaching the ground, we're just going to throttle down. There we go, at 1.3 kilometers up. We really want to get into a nice and shallow glide slope. There is our Kerbal Space Program. We'll throttle down some more. We'll just zoom in to see. Alright, okay. Just gonna have to swing around. Oh, come on, easy now. Whoa! Okay, there we go. Very, very sensitive. It's nice and gentle with the controls. There we go. There's the runway. We still need to be a little bit further along. Okay, we're still a little bit high. We need to be closer to the ground. Okay, usually, I mean, this is an atrocious approach vector, but it will have to do because we do have an enormous amount of maneuverability. So we'll throttle down some more. Okay. There's our runway. I think I've managed to line it up just right for us. I'll just drop that throttle right down and get as close as I can to the ground. Going insanely fast for this. Okay. not losing any speed at all. Yeah, no, we're gonna overshoot the runway. We're going way, way too fast. Okay, this is a toga event. Take off, go around. Throttle back up. Now we're just going to put a little bit of distance between ourselves and the runway before we make that attempt again. Yeah, the aerodynamic properties of this craft, without air brakes, we're going to have a very hard time slowing down enough, so it's going to have to glide in from a good distance away. Okay, still working the throttle. Okay, let's swing around and see if I've put enough distance between us. Now, this 180-degree turn should bleed off a considerable amount of energy. Okay, there we go, we're lined up again. Good, good. This is much, much better. Dropping that throttle as far down as it'll go. There we go. Yeah, this craft is just so lightweight. Even, I mean, we haven't really spent a great deal of fuel. We've barely scratched the surface. Spent maybe 20% of our fuel. Even with that, it is insanely maneuverable and just flies at very, very low speeds. So dropping to 64 meters per second, that's still too fast for takeoff, for landing, but hopefully we should be able to bleed off enough of that by the time we hit that runway. The idea is you want to be able to just touch the runway without slamming into it. So if you slow down too fast, you'll actually drop onto the runway, which is never ever a good experience. Just working my way down, just making sure we're actually in line with the runway. Okay, dropping to 50 meters per second. Getting a little bit low, but that's fine. Come on. Okay, coming down, and there we go. Brakes. Brakes, there we go. Beautiful, we are on the ground. Okay, let's move, throttle up a little bit. Let's get to that hangar. And that is it. We're on the ground. We've made it. That's our mission now complete. And that is how you fly, that is how you build, and that is how you fly your own airplane. And I've managed to use up a full hour for this episode. I do apologize. I had hoped to keep these between 45 and 50 minutes, but we have gone over time. So I'm just gonna, yeah, I guess waste some more of your time by just driving us over to the hangar before we get out. Just taxiing our way. I've managed to use up next to none of the runway, which is cool. Yeah, like I said, this is, I'm amazed really at how successful this craft has turned out from just 5 minutes of messing around with it and just sending it up, you know. Where's that hangar? I want to park right in front of the hangar if I can. I haven't got the steering wheel plugged in, so I'm just using my keyboard for the steering and the yaw control, while using my Wingman Attack flight stick for flight controls. Okay, there's our hangar. drop our speed as we approach one of the taxiways. Seems to be a turnoff there. There we go. Very gently now, there we go. And there's our hangar. Okay, coming up on a right-hand turn. And there's the hangar. So I'm doing about 20 kilometers an hour, which is okay in this case. And there is the hangar. It actually looks quite a lot bigger up close, so brakes. There we go. Lock those brakes. And let's shut down those engines. So I'm gonna have to get out now. Yep. What's going on? There we go. Usually I like to bind keys to turn the engines off, but we don't have that yet, so shut down engine. And shut down engine. Congratulations, Valentina, you've just successfully flown your first ever flight mission. And you have done your crew reports. I can turn this off now. You've successfully landed. I'm gonna take a picture of that. That is cool. There we go. Too easy. All right. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I've used up a whole hour and 2 minutes so far. Thanks everybody for watching again. And if there's anything you'd like me to do in a future video, please do let me know. And anything else, of course, if there's anything you like or don't like, please do let me know. It really does help. It helps me to know that people are watching, and it motivates me to keep doing these videos. So really do appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.